Okay.
All
Recording in progress. So we are now good. And then
right.
Adina, tell me where you are living again. You're in Illinois still? Yes.
I am. I'm in Chicago. I'm still in Lakeview.
Oh, oh,
Yeah.
nice. Oh,
I love the neighborhood. We
I
definitely need
do.
more
Yeah.
space, but it's so hard to leave this neighborhood.
Yeah. I do
I of
miss
course
that.
compare every other area to my access to the lake here and coffee shops and restaurants and everything fails.
Yeah. No,
So
that's Lake is a great spot to
so
be.
I just end up turning around, looking around my place, purging, and finding it in me to hang in there for a little bit longer, just because it's worth. The neighborhood is worth it. The schools are amazing here, so we're happy. Except, yeah, it would be amazing to have two dedicated offices since both my husband and I work from home, and ideally a storage area for myself for all my samples and all of my decorations that I use for installs. So things like that would be a great plus.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, if there's anyone that can figure out how to work it all into one space, it's probably you.
I've been quite creative with the space that we've had. So
That's awesome. All right. Well, let's get started. Well, hi, Adina. Welcome to Wannabe Minimalist. How are you doing today?
hi, thank you so much. I'm very good, very excited to be chatting with you. I've been listening to your episodes and they're so valuable and so good. I've just turned my drives to daycare and back into my personal self-improvement sessions.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you. I am so excited to have you here. Adina and I, for my listeners out there, actually used to work together in Chicago. So the company that we worked for, I worked on the property management arm and she was in the architecture arm of the development company. And so I have gotten to work with her and see her beautiful designs in person. And I am so excited that she is on this show because it's a different perspective than I think we have looked at before. We haven't really looked at the architecture perspective of it and coming from that angle. And I know we're going to talk about kind of interior design a little bit more because I don't know that, I'm not necessarily having an architecture, show here, but I just love that perspective and the idea of how you come from a function, and I'm so excited about this conversation. So thank you so much for agreeing to be here. I know this isn't something you have normally done before, so I'm just really thrilled to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super
Yeah.
excited to be chatting.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what led you into architecture, interior design, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. It's for me, I think it's a little bit unusual. It started very, very early. I knew from sixth grade the path that I'm going to take. And uh, my parents and I went to visit some model homes. They were on the market for a new home. So it was one particular model home that we visited that I just fell in love with. So I asked my parents, who lives here? They live so beautifully. So they told me that this was actually staged and an interior designer created a space and no one actually lives here. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I want to be an interior decorator. So I think when my parents heard that word, the bells went off and we went home. We had a whole discussion about the things that I could do from being a painter to a salesperson to a decorator to an interior designer to an architect. And um, they were very smart in steering me towards career path in architecture with the idea that I'd be more versatile during economic downturns and just have a broader skill set to fall back on, and also would just give me options later in life, whether I chose to be a graphic designer or interior designer or architect or do virtual environments for cartoons and studios, things like that. So I liked the idea. I thought it sounded very sound. And my grandfather was also an architect. I was always keen on hand drawing. And I was always, arranging my room and things like that. I was just things that all the designers do. So it just felt very natural. Like I was very confident in my decisions. So I started taking hand drawing lessons, I think right away after I made that decision. And then I applied for school and got a scholarship at Lawrence Tech. I was still living in Romania, I have to say, and I applied from there. I studied for the SAT and I got a scholarship and ACT, sorry, ACT. and I got a scholarship at Lawrence Tech. And I started studying architecture, and I completely fell in love with it. I forgot about interior design, really. I was just very immersed in it. I was very good at it. My projects were always selected to be displayed at the end of the semester. I was doing all-nighters all the time. I was never the person that finished first. I was pretty much always the person that finished maybe last. I think I was working through presentations to finish up my projects, but I was just so passionate and always wanted to put in more and more and more and just make it the best it could possibly be. And so I was really, really happy with my career choice. And then I got my master's at IIT, and I started working for a firm called Optima, which is a development company led by David Hovey. It was, one of my idols. Was a big step for me. I was very excited to work there, and I worked on some really complicated projects, especially a development in Scottsdale called Camel View of 11 buildings, luxury condos with mixed use with business and pools and gardens, the elevated spaces, kind of hanging gardens. And very interesting project, very, very complicated from a mechanical, electrical, plumbing side. We had to do all of the integration. Our consultants were actually not very good at all. So a lot of the coordination fell on us as architects to figure it all out. And I was still, very early on in my career. So it was a tremendous ask, but I got to learn a lot. And then from there, I came to Lombard, where I got to work with you, and I was hired as a project architect for the Village Market complex downtown, 1,000 square foot development. Again, I had just graduated, so I thought maybe they didn't understand something on my resume. Maybe there's something off. Maybe they'll just fire me the first day when they see me on the job. I don't know, but they really thought it was a good decision. I think I actually even spoken to my manager at the time, asking, am I really the best person for this? And they were very confident that, yes, I can lead this team. Yes, I can lead this project. Yes, I can lead all of the coordination with consultants and the development of the envelope and coordination with the civil engineers. And so it was an amazing project. Again, a tall ask, but it was kind of a sink or swim, and I swam. I just embraced the graphic standards book like it was my Bible. Learned everything I needed to know about every detail I needed to come up with. And then when the envelope was done and permitted, I got laid off because the project was done, and that was the big project that I was hired for. So I went on to other things. But it just felt like my baby was taken from me. I was just in shock that I won't be able to control what goes in the building. What about, the design of every one of the spaces and the lighting and the furnishings? And, it became clear to me that there's a very clear separation between architecture and interior design, and there's another team that does the interior design. And I was, just very taken aback by that. And I think in my future jobs, positions, I always had this feeling that I'm just, missing out on being able to really control the experience within the space, which matters so much, because you can design the most beautiful building, but if the lighting is wrong, then people won't feel comfortable inside. If the materials are not resilient or beautiful, or they don't tell a story, then it doesn't leave an impact. People won't necessarily want to come back. So I just became keener and keener to shift towards interior design. And I landed my dream job at a small company called Torsha, which was sort of a boutique interior design firm that was doing very unique, creative projects. Everything was tailored to each one of the clients, very out of the box, very, very different and interesting, very different compared to what other firms were doing. So I was hired as a senior designer there, and I was able to sort of, control the whole process. I was doing the design and construction documents, and I had assistants for construction documents. But as long as my concepts were sound, and I had to present my concept to the owner, to Frank Torsha, before going into a client presentation, as long as my concept was solid, then I was just free sailing. so and that's where I actually met one of my clients from the residential world. I had designed his corporate headquarters, and several years later, he came back and asked for my help in doing his house. So anyway, Torsha then merged with Nelson, and my role shifted into more of a project management role, and I was managing the biggest account that Nelson had, but he had a lot of standards, and there was very little creative leeway. I got to learn a lot of project management, but it just wasn't fulfilling to me. I wasn't doing the creative work, so I had asked to be shifted into a creative role, but once a company identifies a good manager, I think it's very hard for them to let go of that. So it took a very long time for them to shift my position. And by the time they did, Gensler had already reached out and expressed interest in me. And I went for an interview, and I liked the company, I liked the project. It was sort of a place where I always wanted to end up. So I ended up shifting to a design manager role at Gensler. And there, that was sort of the ultimate experience in being exposed to how to run a great business on the profitability side, as well as the design innovation side, as well as just all of the creme de la creme and the best talent I felt was in the space, creating together, being mindful of budgets, being profitable, timely, creating great client relationships, being trusted advisors, and all of the things that you need to know in order to run a business. So that was for me kind of the epitome. And I was there for 5 years. And towards the end of the 5 years, again, I started feeling the itch of I'm loving it. I love the people I work with. I love what I do, but I don't have enough involvement in the creative process, which is what really lights me up. And again, I asked to shift into more of a creative role. And again, it took a long, long, long time for that to happen. And then the pandemic hit and I was laid off. So at that time, my son was 1 year old, and I decided to stay home with him. And just refocus my attention to just being a mom and spending time with him, and these young years. But I think it took a few months for me to realize that being a stay-home mom is probably the hardest job on the planet. And I said, you know what, this is very hard. I much prefer to be working. So one evening I was just thinking about, where do I go? Where do I go after Gensler? To me, it felt like Gensler was kind of the top. Where do I go? I know that I would be very frustrated going to another company that doesn't have the systems and processes in place that I learned to, rely on to run projects. And I heard about a friend of a friend that was on her own as an interior designer, doing very well. Had started her business several years back and was doing really, really well. And I thought, well, if she can do it, I can do it. So that night, I created my website. I listed myself on Yelp and Google, and that's it. The rest is history. I take very quick decisions and I move forward.
I love that. I love how it was like, if she can do it, I can do it. And heck, I'm going to go do it like right now. Like, I love that there wasn't a ton of hemming and hawing. There wasn't a lot of, I got to have all this in place. I love that you just went with it and trusted your gut on it, because you do design some beautiful spaces. I have seen some of your gorgeous work on Facebook and Instagram. And it's been so much fun kind of following some of your design journey. And so what is a design process like for you? I know it's going to be a bit different than somebody who's coming at this from their own house, which is what a lot of my readers or listeners, are looking for. But I think it'd be really interesting to hear what an expert does. Like, how do you start your process? How do you even go about?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's definitely two parts. The process has to be solid for the design to be solid. So I do have a kind of a process on how to run a project, and then a process on how to design a project. So I'd say the process is important because it allows me to be efficient and create more time for design. So initially, for example, when I started my business, I would meet with everyone that would reach out. We would have a walkthrough. I would be, giving advice there on the spot on what to do, and then I would put together a full proposal, and then people would either move forward or not move forward. And a lot of them do not move forward. A few of them do move forward. And I was wasting a lot of time in the sense. So I had to create a more streamlined intake process. So now everyone fills out an inquiry form on my website, which gives me kind of the nuts and bolts of what the project is. And then we have a Zoom call where they might walk me through the space and show me the pain points. Or if there's no space, it's a new build, we just discuss what the space will be. We look at floor plans. And then I put together kind of a fee plan. We meet again. And if everything, the scope that I defined, the fee plan sound good, then I put together a proposal. And after that's signed, we then meet in person. We walk the space in person. We might discover some other areas that we need to include, and then we move forward. So the first step is this in-person meeting, as well as me measuring the space and taking a look at the space. And then we have a visioning and discovery session, which is really key to the process. So this is where I really get to know the person, what they're passionate about, their lifestyle, their values. And then we go through a very in-depth sort of aesthetic dive, which, people love. It's about color trends and stylistic elements. And we talk about everything design and how spaces feel. And do we like this casual, or do we like this more of a luxurious feel, or how do we want people to feel in our space? How do we want ourselves to feel? And so from there, I'm able to develop a very focused look and feel document, and that becomes the foundation that we build on for the project. So I check throughout the design process of the project. I kind of check back. Am I doing what we said we would be doing? Is this aligned with our original look and feel? So that's kind of the process, the overall process for how to organize a project, how I run a project. On the design side, I always want to make sure that we look at the box first. So is the architecture of the space aligned with what, our intentions, and are the big elements good? Are the floors good? Is the lighting good? Are the walls good? I mean, you can put beautiful furniture in a space, but if these large, impactful elements are not good, then everything will just still feel drab. So if I see that, there are things that need to be addressed, like cabinetry or lighting or floors, I always suggest that we address those first. And if the budget doesn't allow to do both, then maybe we do that in phase 1, and then phase 2 is furnishings. If everything looks good and we're just doing furnishings, then I go into the design process, which is obviously the most exciting and the shortest phase, smallest amount of time of what I do. But that's when I get to go out and meet with reps and look at the kind of the latest products out there, and get to sit in furniture and feel tile and wall covering and all the beautiful things. And I come back with a design proposal, and once things are approved, then we move into procurement. And that's an area too that I was a big bottleneck in my business, since it's very tedious, creating the invoices and placing the orders and tracking the items. And I finally just signed up for software that helps me do this so beautifully and so efficiently. And I just can't believe it took me this long to get on with this program. But yeah, that was a big step in my business, to just set the processes in place to help me do the best job possible. So
nice. I like what you said there about that you actually go out and you sit in the things and you feel the things. And how do So I know so many people are looking at, we just buy so much on Amazon, right? Because it's easy for people at home. Do
Yeah.
you have some favorite places to shop for furniture and things for the home that maybe we aren't looking at that are still accessible to the general public like us? Because I know you, as an interior designer and architect, are going to have special wholesale places you can go that the rest of
Yeah.
us can't go to. Or are there any of those places that we think are wholesale that we actually can go to? I don't know if you know any of those places, but where would you suggest people go shop for? Different things. And then I want to come back to kind of figuring out styles, but I think let's start here with the shops.
Yeah, so there for me, like I said, I do shop at places that are available for trade. So I go to High Point and I meet all of these reps and manufacturers, and I sit in all of the furniture and I get to hear the stories. Some of these sometimes do get sold on other websites also. Like Burke Decor will sell some of these items. Friends and Son will sell these. And then for a lower price point, you can find pretty decent things on Wayfair, for example. Dining chairs, and as long as you read the reviews and reviews are good, then I'd say those are good resources. Um, Obviously, there's West Elm and Crate and Barrel and CB2, which I do think they have a decent offering of products. Especially, I like West Elm for and Crate and Barrel for their seating. I like CB2 for some of their like marble tables or accent tables. Pottery Barn has some good seating and some good, wood furniture. So I think that there's access to certain, decent quality items out there. And then there are these other more elevated items that are sometimes available on these other websites. And I think it comes with a price point. And I think, working with a designer, people can usually get best prices as well and access to some of these other items. But it is a luxury. I can't say everyone has it in their budget to work with a designer. So I'd say if you're on a tight budget, then look for reviews as much as possible, and whenever you can, go to see the things and sit in the things.
I love that.
In
Yeah, that
person.
tip
Yeah.
is great because how many times have people purchased things and they're like, "Oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be." And
Yeah.
but I also like the idea of mixing and matching, like getting that, just like people do a lot with their clothing, right? Getting a couple like really nice designer pieces, like the big basics that are really gonna like stick with you throughout a very long time. And then getting the kind of more kitschy things maybe at the CB2s and Crate
Mhm.
and Barrels that can be maybe a little bit more of that splash of interest. Is that
Yeah, absolutely. I
resonate?
think the things like this, like the sectional, is something that I don't compromise on. That has to be comfortable, well built, long lasting. That can stay with you for many, many years. And it's also the biggest item in your space. So I think one mistake that people do is, especially when they have families, is they go for these darker sofas that are, not very expensive, or, just some, because they think, oh, the kids will just tear them apart. And that's what, from day one, your space is weighed down by this ginormous black sofa that's just an eyesore. So in my opinion, I would just say get something that's maybe middle of the range, or just more beautiful. Maybe cover it up with some throws if you're gonna have a kid party. But I don't think kids are quite that destructive. At least mine is not. He's quite careful. And I've instilled it in him that, these are nice things. I don't want you drawing
Right.
on walls. I don't want you drawing on the sofa. I make a big deal of it if he does. And I show him how hard it is to clean up, and that we just draw on paper. So I think you can teach kids to respect and appreciate your furniture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and as far as like
Okay.
adding a few extra things, I absolutely agree with that. And the kitschy things, I personally love to shop at vintage stores, antique stores, even thrift stores. I mean, I'm amazed at the things that I can find there. Maybe an accent table, maybe some decor item, or some brass candles, artwork for sure. You can find really nice artwork at vintage stores. So things like that are smaller accessories, I definitely love getting at either vintage or CB2 West Elm. I think they have nice items as well.
I love that. Okay, so I'm going to get into some more designy kind of questions because
Okay.
a place I struggle with is liking too many different styles, right? Like,
Yeah.
so, and then we've moved around a lot too, right? So we've lived in downtown Chicago, where obviously our style was a little bit more city focused. And now we live in Southern California, where it's like mid century modern. Our home is a 1969 home. So it's got, that lovely California 70s vibe going
Okay.
with the architecture of the house. So, how do you start to kind of meld, combine pieces, combined of design styles when you already have maybe some decent pieces that you're not looking to replace, but now I'm in a different kind of environment?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to look at the architecture of your space, and the things have to work with the architecture of the space. They can't be fighting with it. I obviously do encourage mixing styles. I'm not a proponent of one style. I don't follow any of the styles, but I think knowing what the styles are and how they play together and blending a little bit of styles. And I think just trying to come up with a story for each space and how you want it to feel is quite important. And honestly, as a designer, I have the same problem. I love so many things and so many different styles and types of things. And I sometimes feel like I'm walking a very, very fine line
Hmm.
in blending all of these styles. So I'm not sure if you saw my project Adler on the Park. It was a show house where I got to design a suite
Is that the one that
as a
had the
home
sheep?
office.
Yeah, that had the sheep, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
the one with the
Okay.
shape.
I do know that one. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I in that space, I mean, I was limited as to the kind of vendors that I could work with. I needed to find sponsors. I needed to find people that were willing to participate in the event and sponsor me. And was not willing to spend $100,000 to furnish this office. Um, and so I ended up having a modern desk, Chinese Art Deco sofa, a pastoral console table. It was a contemporary light fixture, and I felt like to the last second, I was so nervous about blending all of these styles together and how the space is going to feel. And once everything came together, it felt so good and so comfortable. And there wasn't one person that walked in the space that didn't say, "Ah, wow, I feel so good in here." But I think the key there was to kind of keep it consistent. So I kept everything very light and bright, and then complementary wood tones. The items did have different wood colors, but they were complementary. So they were kind of in the same family. And some were darker, some were lighter, but they flowed together. It wasn't like I had, yellow woods and red woods and all the colors. It was just a range. So it felt very cozy, very lived in, as if the space had been sort of created over time. Then items were accumulated over time. I had a lot of vintage items. I had pagoda red items, which are Chinese antique, super special items that reflect the time and a place and how things were done then. I had this um brazier, which is this beautifully carved brass vessel, whether they used to put coals in back in the day in the 1800s, and women would take it with them and kind of heat their hands in the winter as they were away from their home, and just all kinds of different items. There's a elephant bell, a bronze elephant bell. And everything worked together, but I think it's a matter of it comes down to just making sure the color palette is consistent, and especially if you're working with a small place, it's just maybe keeping most of the things bright and light, and then just playing with accent pillows or throws or artwork to bring life into the space. But you can absolutely blend styles. Um, I guess if I had to come up with like a rule of thumb, I would say 75% of the items have to play nice together. And then 25 could be oddballs and just things
Ooh.
that make you wonder, like, what is this? And what is this? And this is quite different.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's a fun little hack right there. So 75% play well together. You generally tend to go toward light and bright. And then the 25% of just quirky fun.
Yeah.
Okay, very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
All right. That sounds fun. All right. So, what's a way for people to get maybe a more elevated look to their space if they have? So, I think it kind of probably just a little bit deeper dive on the answer you just gave to how do you start then figuring out what is your style? Do you suggest people just start like a Pinterest board so they can kind of find things that they like? Do you suggest getting magazines, like clipping things out? I mean, I'm so jealous. Interior designers just seem to have like this super knack of just like making things come together. And I just wonder if someone like myself maybe just doesn't push it far enough, right? Like, do I stop too soon and make something feel safer? Like I'm missing my 25% of things, but I don't feel like my house feels super cohesive. So where do we start to get that kind of cohesive and then that elevated look where it just feels great when you walk in?
Yeah, I think you're right on with the Pinterest board or getting wherever you get your inspiration, house or magazines, like starting a vision board is key. And us as designers, we do that as well. I mean, I need that vision board for projects. So, and one for myself, and two, to explain to the client, this is what the space will feel like. And then you have to look deeply into, okay, I really like this living room. What are the components of this? There's not that I see some primitive small table, and then I see a very contemporary sectional, and I see a very cool coffee table, or I see the light fixture really is impactful. Whatever it is, like look at the items that are making up the space that you're really drawn to, and then try to kind of replicate it in your own style. And like, I don't want you copying somebody else's design, but finding a way to discover your own style through inspiration. I think that's really the best way to do it. And then building that space from that and making sure, like, keep going back to your inspiration and saying, is this aligned with my inspiration? You know, would I see this kind of piece in this design? And if the answer is yes, then go forward with it. If the answer is no, is maybe keep looking for something else that makes sense for the design.
Hmm. Okay. How do
But I
you have
think, like,
patience to find the right piece? Because that's sometimes where I struggle too. I'm like, I want something that's like this, but I can't find it, but I need something. How do you then have the patience to just hold out a little bit?
yeah, no, you do have to have the patience to find the right elements in the space. Yeah, I mean, obviously as designers, that's why we do what we do, because it's very time
Mhm.
consuming. So
Yeah.
it's hard to add that on to a day job. And for people, I don't know how people do it.
Yeah.
A lot of times I feel like homes are just kind of whatever put together. So we have a bed and a sofa, and it doesn't feel like, usually that's where I get brought in. It's people saying, we have a good house. It was built 5 years ago. Everything's new, but it doesn't feel like us. It's very builder special. We want to personalize it so that our personalities are reflected, but we don't know how. Or maybe it's an older home and things are really in need of being updated, or maybe it's a new construction where, just we're starting with a blank slate. But it's a lot of time to dedicate to curating a space where you feel your best and where that can support your lifestyle.
Yeah. Okay. One question specifically for me, because I'm being very selfish
But I
because I'm
want
the
to answer,
host. And
sorry,
oh, go
sorry.
ahead.
I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah. Yeah.
answer your question, because there's a few important things that people can do in their space to elevate the look.
Okay.
And I think it comes down to avoiding the big faux pas that I see over and
Ooh,
over in every home I go into.
ooh, do tell.
And yes, yes. Number one is window treatments. And what I see people do is start their window treatments right above the window. and end them right at the end of the window. What you want to do is bring those window treatments all the way up as close to the ceiling as possible and take them all the way out to the side walls and plan for the fullness when the curtain is pulled, so it's still wavy. And usually it's double the amount, double the distance that you have for the wall. That's how much material you need, how much width of material you need to have. It's double that distance. So window treatments are a big one. I think going all the way up and all the way out just gives us the feeling of spaciousness and more luxurious and bigger windows. It gives you the impression of bigger windows. So that's number one. Number two, rugs. I always see rugs that are too small for the place. And the rug, you have to think about it as your island. This is at least the first front seats of the sofa or the chairs have to be on the rug, ideally more. But that's the island that you get to play on. So if the rug is small, the space will look small and feel tight and awkward. And then the other one that's a huge pet peeve of mine and a huge giveaway that an amateur has maybe designed that place is ending wall finishes on outside corners. So I see this done a lot where people want an accent color, but then there's an opening, for example, or there's an outside edge, and they just end that color on the outside edge. I think the key is to look at walls as volumes and continue that color or wall covering, whatever it is, that wall finish all the way around. If you have an opening and you really don't want to bleed that color into the adjacent space, create a frame or a place for the wall covering or the paint to dye into so that it looks intentional. So I think these are a few just key design elements that I personally follow that I'd say are some pro tricks to making your space feel more elevated. And then really thinking about what the biggest elements in the space are and paying attention to those, getting some nice, like the dining table, the sectional, and the rugs. They are the most impactful in the space. So, pay attention to what you're putting in the space. Make sure that those flow and they're nice quality. Dining chairs, things like that. So, and lighting is super important. And
Lighting
this is
is
another
so
one.
hard.
Lighting is definitely hard, but it's one of the most important items in every space because it really sets the mood and it sets how people feel. So having 3 light sources in every space, that's kind of a rule of thumb. So you'll have your chandelier and maybe some floor lamps and maybe some indirect lamp or another table lamp somewhere, just a way to kind of dim everything down but have a twinkle of lights throughout. Color temperature is super important. I'd say as a rule of thumb, 2700 Kelvin is the color for social spaces, for that warm light that makes you feel good and look good and have that intimate conversations, that kind of like candlelight quality. But for task lighting, like kitchens and bathrooms and your desk, you want to have 3000 Kelvin. So that's the cleaner, whiter light, the brighter lights. So what I see a lot is I think people use those daylight kind of bulbs, which are like 4000 Kelvin. That's the higher the number, the whiter the light. So it goes into this interrogation room feeling. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm being studied, I'm being analyzed. I don't feel comfortable being myself, saying anything. It's too light, too bright, too blue. Yeah. So I think 2700 Kelvin. That's the key to know for chandeliers, accent lighting, sconces, things like that, where you want warm lighting.
2700, super pro tip. Oh my gosh. See,
Yes.
who would have thought about the lighting, Kelvin? I am very happy to have had you say, it was like, that's like super cool. All right.
Yes,
Awesome.
yes.
What's your thought on rugs on carpet?
Okay. Rugs on carpet?
Yeah. So like I live in a rental. Yeah. I can't change my flooring.
Yeah.
So thoughts
absolutely
on, yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. That is definitely a do. I mean, it will bring the attention to your rug more than your carpet. It feels like a layered, elevated look. It's a absolute do. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see what other questions. So yeah, that's where I was gonna go next, was kind of that kind of more of a selfish ask, because
Yeah.
so we're in a rental home. And so we can't, I know that's not your specialty. So thank you for indulging me here. Um but so if I can't change the big things, do I do things like cover them up? So maybe I cover the flooring with a rug throughout. Do you have any good resources for
Yeah.
where we should find rugs? Because oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I can spend hours looking for rugs.
Yeah.
And it's very hard. And then what were some of my other questions? Yeah, let's start there. Like, what are some ways that we
Yeah.
can kind of tackle those big things that if we don't have the opportunity to actually make any big differences?
So number one is figuring out if you really don't have the opportunity to make
Okay.
those big changes, because you'll be surprised if you go to the landlord with a proposal of, I have an eye for design and I have put together a design proposal for you. And this is what I propose that we should do. I'd like us to change the lighting, and these are the light fixtures that I've selected. I like you to change the carpet or change the cabinets. And I am willing to put in my time to source these items, to oversee installation, whatever it is. And I just need you to reimburse me for the expense of labor and the items themselves. I mean, you're doing a lot of legwork for the landlord, and this is going to be just improvement to their space. And, when it gets turned over, it will go for obviously more money. So, sell it to them as that kind of a asset improvement. If they're not willing to do any of these things, then absolutely there's things that you can do on your own. Even things like painting the wall. I mean, you can absolutely paint the wall. Sometimes they ask for you to paint it back, and then other times if they see it and they like it, they might be okay with you keeping it. That's happened to me in one of the rental places that we stayed in. We painted this wall beautiful, like dark ruby red, and you kind of had like this Venetian feel to it. And the landlord said, nope, you have to paint everything back to what it was. And then when he actually saw it, he's like, oh, okay, I like it, keep it. And it was a talking point. Everyone that walked in was like, oh, I love your red wall.
Mm,
um, and then there's now like peel and stick wall covering that you can
mm,
install and easily remove, so that with that you can really transform the look of, powder room, or add an accent wall to your dining area or your bedroom. That's, I think, a really good one, a really good way to make an impact. I think, yeah, lighting is a big one. So if you say the landlord's not on board with replacing the light fixtures, you can always get plug-in wall sconces that are still beautiful. Floor lamps, table lamps that you can then bring with you to the next place. Obviously, rugs and nice furniture you can bring with you, but things
mhm.
like rugs, that's a very specific item to a specific room size. I would assume I wouldn't spend a lot of money on rugs. I would go for, I would add rugs, but I would assume that I will need to sell it or maybe not be able to use it in a future place. Um, so I just wouldn't go for the nicest, most expensive kind of rug. Um, Section, you can go with modular sectional, so then you can add to it if you move to a larger place later on, or you can reconfigure it. That's what we did. Previously, we were in a rental and we bought a sectional that we had arranged in a different way. And when we moved to our larger home, we were able to rearrange it, and we actually didn't need to add to it yet. Um,
Hmm.
let's see what else you can do. Definitely artwork. That's a big one. Large artwork can make such a big impact. And you don't, I mean, yes, I appreciate artwork and I love artwork, and I've spent a lot of money on artwork. And in some cases, I've made my own. So we had a humongous painting that my husband had of just a watermelon slice. And I found this beautiful wall covering that looks like it's painted on from Knoll. And I ordered a big piece of that wall covering. I wrapped it, we stapled it, and it just looks like a beautiful watercolor.
Hmm.
Everyone thinks it's a painting. So you
That's
you can't tell the difference.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Or even framing, like finding a wall covering that you really love and then just popping that into a frame. Having a gallery wall. finding a few people, they don't have to be expensive, but they have, you can definitely find cool prints even on Amazon. Um, they have, very nice, interesting pieces. World Market, you can find interesting art at. So yeah, I think you can really dress up the walls on your own, and these are things that you can bring with you, and you can invest in more expensive original artworks. You'll be able to reuse it. But like I said, vintage stores have amazing. There's one called Mercantile M here in Chicago where I find incredible pieces at Brown Elephant. I'm not sure if they're in California as
I'll have
well,
to
but
check. Yeah.
Brown Elephant is a thrift store, and there's a lot of junk, but there's sometimes you find some beautiful art, or I picked up some amazing brass candle holders there. So yeah, you never know. It's always good to check and see what's the latest. Yeah, there's Redefined Decor in Chicago that's really good. Warehouse 55, some really we have some amazing resources here. I feel like we're spoiled.
Yeah, you're making me
Link,
jealous.
yeah, I'm sure they are there as well. I'm just
I'm
not
sure.
familiar with
Yeah.
what they are.
Well, and even if we need to take a trip up to like LA sometime to do some fun shopping for a weekend, it would be nice to take a weekend trip up to LA anyway. So I think they have a little more funky
Ah,
things going on up there, but that's all right. I know. I'm honestly, the architecture in Chicago is amazing. If anyone's listening to this and has any desire to see architecture and you haven't been to Chicago, please go. It is such a fun city. I had never, it wasn't necessarily something I was really into, but then getting
yeah,
work with the developer and with Lowenberg and all the things, it
yeah,
was so interesting. I just found it so fascinating. So I just thank you so much for all of the information you've been sharing today. It's been just really cool to kind of pick your brain, and I just
yeah.
appreciate you, letting me kind of do that. And I know that this isn't normally what you do, but tell people where they can find you so they can look at I'll definitely make sure I have links to the projects that you have so that people can see the visual of what you have, and just tell them where they can find you so they can come see your.
Great, great. Yes, so my website is adinahall.com, and my Instagram is instagram.com/adinahall. Adina Hall Design, sorry. And then on Facebook, it's Adina Hall Design LLC. So yes, please, follow me.
Yeah,
Come
and if
by,
you're
check in, say
if
hello.
you're in Chicago or the Chicago area and you are looking to hire an interior designer, I would highly recommend Adina. Her places are gorgeous. So
Thank you
that's
so
been,
much.
oh
And
my
and on
gosh.
my Instagram, whenever I post pictures of some of my projects, which I try to do regularly, I don't just post picture. I always post design tips and pro tips and feng shui tips and all the things. So there's always an opportunity to learn something and not just a pretty big, hey, here's the dining room I designed. It goes a little bit deeper. So there's definitely valuable takeaways for anyone that wants to join me for this ride.
I love it. I love it. And congratulations on going out on your own. I'm so proud of you. That's just amazing. And I just cannot wait to see where your journey takes you. And yeah, I'm along for the ride. I love it. So I think it's fabulous when people can just find their passion and then have a way to follow it. Like, I just love that too. So
Yeah.
congratulations to you. And I wish you
Thank
all the
you.
best. Yeah.
Congratulations to you as well. I think what
Thank
you're
you.
doing is amazing, and I'm on board with the new name, by the way.
Oh, thank
Wanna be
you.
clutter free?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's that's so much valuable information in your podcast. So super excited. I've been working my way through them and just loving everything that I'm learning. I listened to the one about how to introduce vegetables and get kids to enjoy
Mm,
meal times, and I
yeah.
can't wait. I'm implementing tonight.
Oh, wonderful. Good, good, good. Well, I can't wait to hear how that goes too. So,
Yeah,
yeah, we'll definitely, I can't wait to hear all about
keep
it.
in
So
touch.
that'll be
Yes,
super fun. Yeah.
definitely. All
Well,
right.
thank you again, Adina, and you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. Have a great day yourself.
Okay.
Thanks.